Hey YouTubers! This time another debunking Eric Dubay video. Again, I will be showing you that he's misleading you, that he lies to you and uses false evidence. In this presentation there is probably less fraud, but I will address more the lack of knowledge. The problem with Dubay is that he constantly forgets that if he wants to disprove a ball, he should focus on that, on the shape, and not hide in a fog of pseudoscience. Let us look at what he has to say about magnetism. In order to understand how Eric Dubay is manipulating you with regard to compasses and Earth's magnetism, it is important to understand the basics of magnetism. For instance, a light bulb needs a plus and a minus voltage, a difference in potential to be able to burn, so that this potential difference can take care that the electrons go from the minus to the plus and make the lamp light up. If a battery would only have a plus, then we could not light up the lamp. It is a monopole of voltage does not exist. Water also needs a potential difference to flow, whether it's by a pump in a tube or by the means of gravity. If there is a potential difference, then water will flow. A magnet basically has two poles, which we know as the North and the South Pole, and the magnetic flux flows from the North to the South Pole. The magnetic field around the bar magnet can be seen with a magnetograph as shown below, where you can drop on a piece of paper iron filings, and then they will automatically form themselves along the lines of the flux. It should of course be noted that in case of such a bar magnet, the filings would prefer to follow a three-dimensional picture, but if you only drop it on a piece of paper, you only get these two dimensions of the image. So, we have a magnet with two poles, which are known as the North and the South Pole, and there are a few things you need to know. When you cut the magnet in two, you end up with two magnets. Splitting one of those magnets again, and you get again two smaller magnets. You can keep on doing this up to the point where you basically have two iron atoms, where then one atom is the North Pole and the other is the South Pole. You never ever get a monopole. That doesn't exist. We can measure if a line goes in or out of a magnet, and that is why we know that the North Pole on the Earth is actually the magnetic South Pole. So the magnetic flux flows from the South Pole to the North Pole. And if we look at point 108 in Dubay's book, where he makes an unfounded claim that compass is an impossible and nonsensical instrument for use on the ball Earth. It simultaneously points north and south. Well, of course it does, because it has a fix. It is a little iron arrow, such a compass. So of course it will point at both directions. But it doesn't really point to the North Pole as such. No, it aligns itself with the magnetic flux. So if, for instance, around the Earth a magnetic storm caused by the sun would disturb the field, the compass would point in another direction, because the flux would change. However, the North Pole doesn't move, so a compass will follow the flux. And as you can see, it is very nice that the flux goes in a circular form, and that makes it work very well on a globe. To say it is impossible and nonsensical on a globe is actually bollocks. It works so perfectly that it will align itself beautiful along the lines of the flux, along the surface of the Earth. In 106, he then makes the claim that the so-called South Pole is an arbitrary point, and that there is only a ceremonial South Pole, which is admittedly and provably not the actual South Pole. However, nowhere in his document he then shows who admitted that that was the case, and how does he prove that it is not the actual South Pole. The only thing he does is make the statement out of the blue. And then he makes the claim that because the actual South Pole could be demonstrably confirmed with the aid of a compass showing the north to be 360 degrees around the observer. Now let's analyze his statements. First, the so-called arbitrary point, which he says is shown by a pole. Well, I hadn't seen this before, I like it actually. So he apparently did see it. And the problem I have is that every month new pictures show up of this point in the South Pole. So there must be a place, if it is not a pole but the edge, that there is a place around the edge where this pole stands. And why isn't he capable of telling us where that is? Where do I need to go to find this so-called fake South Pole, which he claims? But there is more. I can actually turn the whole statement around, and just by replacing South with North Pole, I would basically have a statement that is still valid. Because you could say the following: because the actual North Pole could be demonstrably confirmed with the aid of a compass showing south to be 360 degrees around to the observer, and since this has never been achieved, the model remains pure theory. Now, how come if I stand on the North Pole, magnetic North Pole, or the magnetic South Pole, that my compass doesn't show the other pole to be 360 degrees around? Why is that? This is no proof, because you can change the statement, and here is why. When you are at the actual magnetic South Pole, or the actual magnetic North Pole, which is in the south, you stand in a field where all lines go up straight, or straight in that direction. And that means there is no line along which the compass can align itself. And what you will see is that actually a compass will tend to bend down or bend upward based on which pole you are. But it cannot show the other pole 360 degrees around, simply because all the lines go up at the actual point. So another statement he makes is then, along with the establishment's excuse that the geomagnetic poles supposedly constantly move around. Yeah, the poles move, and the only explanation is that there is a non-stable melted iron core inside of the globe. And on the flat Earth, no explanation can be given why the magnetic pole is actually shifting. Here you can see how it shifts. In 1960 it was there, in 1980 it was there, in 2000 it was there, and it is moving closer. I have this picture from Wiki, and unfortunately they don't have the 2010 and of course it's still not 2020 position. So it is moving, and basically that debunks his fixed magnetic North Pole on the flat Earth. Again, that the poles are, let's say, it's simultaneous. He says it simultaneously points north and south over a flat surface, yet claims to be pinpointing two constantly moving geometric poles at the opposite ends of a spinning sphere. Now, I already show you that the magnetic compass follows the flux along the curvature. And he then says if the compass needles were actually drawn to the North Pole of a globe, the opposing south needle would actually be pointing up and off into outer space. Now, that is not the case, but when you do come to a pole, either the South Pole or the North Pole of your compass will be pointing downwards. And it will start doing that when you are a few hundred miles away from the actual magnetic pole, and because when it is pushed down, it cannot free move anymore, and you could actually lose direction. So they made compasses like these that can actually float in oil and can actually point more down and up and continue to turn around and help you to find the actual pole. So this whole statement in 108 is not making any sense. But then he comes up with his explanation of the North Pole on a flat Earth. And he uses a ring magnet and the kind that is found in loudspeakers. He claims they have a central North Pole, and with the opposite South Pole actually being all points along the outer circumference. And this perfectly, he states, demonstrates the magnetism of a flat Earth, whereas the alleged source of magnetism in the ball Earth model is emitted from a hypothetical molten magnetic core in the center of the ball, which they claim conveniently causes both poles. And here he starts again about moving. We already showed that they move. There is no fixed North Pole. But let's have a look at how he is faking his arguments. He's faking his arguments simply because of the following reason. A ring magnet used for a loudspeaker has a south pole on one side and a north pole on the other side, and it looks like here the picture in the right. And the flux goes in both directions around the magnet and through the center of the magnet. Now, in order to make an efficient loudspeaker driver, what people do is they try to capture all the flux that wants to go outside and try to bring it to the inside as well, because the more flux you have, the less current you need in the coil of the loudspeaker to move. So how do they capture the flux? They use electrical steel. Electrical steel has the property that it conducts magnetism very well, but never itself becomes magnetic. So they mount a plate and they mount a core along which the coil of the loudspeaker then can move. And then it seems as if you have brought the North Pole to the center, but the only thing you do is you take all the flux from the back of the ring magnet and help it guide it through the center. And that only works because we keep a gap of air, because otherwise we would have a short circuit of the magnetic flux and there would be no North Pole at all. So, if we would close the gap, if we would have a disc-shaped magnet, it would look like this. You would have a South Pole on one side and a North Pole on the other. That is how it works. And that means that all the magnetic flux on the North Pole go out straight up and then via a long route along come back to the South Pole. And that basically means that anybody who is on this flat plate could not use a compass at all, because wherever you are on this flat disk, you will always be standing in upgoing magnetic flux, and therefore your compass never would be able to point to a north or a south. So, ring magnets of the kind found in loudspeakers, and then he says, perfectly demonstrate the magnetism of the flat Earth. Well, it does not. I just showed you. That is the wrong model. We don't have somewhere in the Earth a gap that creates a sort of southern or south pole ring and then a magnetic north center. It doesn't work like that. And we do still see moving poles, so also that is a non-issue. So all he says doesn't prove anything. And on a globe, however, we can explain how things work. On a flat Earth, we cannot explain. This is therefore absolutely debunked. In 109 he makes a strange statement like there are no fixed east or west points, just as there is no fixed south. Well, as if there is a fixed north, then there is a fixed south. There is no other thing possible. And he says the North Pole is the only proven fixed point on the flat Earth, and we already showed that the North Pole is moving as well as the South Pole is moving. And the east and west are simply 90 degrees of the direction of the magnetic flux. So this whole statement is no proof at all against a ball Earth. In 110 he then makes again statements that like Magellan and others, east-west circumvallations of the Earth are often quoted as proof of the ball model, and in actual fact, he says, again, which actual fact? The sailing or flying at right angles to the North Pole and eventually returning to one's original location is more difficult or mysterious than doing so on a globe. Just as an architect's compass can place in its center point on a flat piece of paper and trace a circle either way around the pole, so a ship or a plane can circumnavigate the flat Earth. Yes, and it can do the same on the ball. So it doesn't prove anything about the shape of the Earth. It is not a proof. And now, again, the conspiracy pops up again, because he claims since the North Pole and Antarctica are covered in ice and guarded no-fly zones, no ships or planes have been known to circumvent the Earth in north-south directions. The only reason nobody has done that is that most of the time the whole north is covered in ice and no ship can make the full circle. And it would also be a direction that absolutely makes no sense to go. But how come no fly zones? Yeah? Even if it was true, how could not being allowed to visit an area be proof of anything? It doesn't make sense. And he didn't even figure out what it would require to enforce flight restrictions around Antarctica. If you calculate on a flat Earth what the circumference is of that ice wall, and you would say let's put an aircraft carrier that can have planes flying in both directions 300 miles and guard the area and be in time to capture somebody who tries to sneak through. Like, think about drug smugglers that manage to get in the US by boat still every week. So if you want to prevent people from going to the edge, you would need so many ships that if you would do it with aircraft carriers, you would need more than all the aircraft carriers that exist in the world. If you say, well, let's put a normal military ship every 100 miles, yeah, so that I can intercept anyone trying to sneak through, you would need more ships than the whole US, Chinese and Russian Navy have together. It is simply impossible. So this is a fallacy and a lie. It's based on trying to use a conspiracy again, and that is not factually proving the shape of the Earth, of the ball. So, again, at no surprise, Dubay shows to be a person who is skilled in setting up fallacies. But when we analyze his statements, the only conclusion is that he is a fraud. He is not capable of proving the Earth is not a spinning ball. He doesn't understand magnetism. He claims the flat Earth has a fixed magnetic North Pole and everybody can see it is moving, and basically that already disproves the flat Earth. But on a flat shape, the whole top of the disk would be a North Pole and the bottom of that disk would be the South Pole. So no compass could work on a flat Earth. I hope I was clear. Thank you for watching, and any new subs are of course welcome. And guys and girls, have a nice day.